sanitation and hygiene activities to help stem the further spread of cholera. However, more resources are needed without delay. Humanitarian partners require 50 million United States dollars to sustain cholera response operations through the end of 2025. Our humanitarian colleagues warn that the outbreak is being fueled by ongoing conflict, mass displacement, and the collapse of public health and water systems. Since July of last year, Sudanese health authorities have reported more than 84,000 suspected cases and over 2,100 deaths across 17 of Sudan's 18 states, with upwards of 33,000 cases recorded this year alone. However, our partners on the ground warn that underreporting may be masking the true scale of this cholera outbreak. More than 33.5 million people, including 5.7 million children under the age of 5, are at risk of cholera. Our humanitarian colleagues say that Khartoum, Al Jazeera, and Gedaref and White Nile states account for more than 70% of all reported cases. Khartoum alone has reported more than 23,400 suspected cases. The outbreak is now expanding to Darfur, with cross-border transmission reported into Chad and South Sudan. OCHA warns that the ongoing rainy season, which lasts through October, threatens to worsen the crisis by contaminating water sources and driving further infections. It's critical that donors and the international community step up and urgently scale up financial support to prevent further spread of this deadly disease and to save lives. Turning to Somalia, where humanitarian colleagues say that clashes in the towns of Mokokori and Hiran, in the Hiran regions in the center of the country, have intensified since last week, displacing thousands of civilians. 6 health facilities in the area have suspended operations due to security concerns, cutting off access to essential health care and emergency services for thousands of vulnerable people. Continued fighting has also compromised water sources and supply routes, significantly increasing the risk of malnutrition and disease outbreak among displaced population. Our humanitarian partners and local authorities are working to verify how many people have been displaced. Nope. Always silence your phones. 6 health facilities in the area have suspended operations due to security concerns, cutting off access to essential health care, as I've said, to thousands of people. Continued fighting has also compromised water sources and supply routes, significantly increasing the risk of malnutrition, disease outbreaks among displaced population. Our humanitarian partners and local authorities are working to verify how many people have been displaced to assess options on how to best deliver assistance. More than 58,000 people have been forced to flee because of the armed conflict between the government forces and non-state armed groups in Hiran and Middle Shabelle region since January. And a couple more notes, one from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where peacekeepers have established 2 mobile operating bases in the villages of Ofe and Bakuvutu in Jugu territory in Ituri, in the east. These mobile bases will help peacekeepers to respond quickly to local threats posed by armed groups in the area. The deployment will remain operational until mid-July and are parts of Operation Utor Bumi, which was launched in March of 2025 to help strengthen local security and support broader mission objectives, including by providing protection for quick impact projects such as rehabilitation of local administrative offices in Ofe and support the outcome of recent dialogue between armed groups that we've been telling you about. In North Kivu, suspected members of the Allied Democratic Forces carried out attacks on the 7th and 8th of July in 2 locations west of Eringeti, resulting in the deaths of 6 civilians. The peacekeeping mission condemns these acts of violence and continues to deploy patrols in ADF hotspots to facilitate the freedom of movements of civilians and access to farming areas. And our support mission in Libya strongly urges all parties in Libya to refrain from using force, particularly in densely populated areas, and to avoid any action or political rhetoric that could trigger escalation or lead to renewed clashes. The mission continues its effort to help de-escalate the situation in and around the capital city of Tripoli and calls on all parties to engage in good faith towards this end. The UN mission urges the swift implementation of security arrangements developed by the Truce and Security and Military Arrangements Committee, which the mission continues to support. forces recently deployed in Tripoli must withdraw from that city without delay. Lastly, a report released today by our friends at the UN Environment Program finds the annual heat-related deaths among older persons have risen by an estimated 85% since 1990s. The report recommends proactive urban planning that prioritizes age-friendly, resilient cities with reduced pollution and improved accessibility. UNEP also recommends expanded green spaces to safeguard this vulnerable population who form an increasingly dominant part of the world population. Edie, and then Gabriel.
Thank you, Steph. On fuel for Gaza, you mentioned how much got in yesterday. Did the UN try again today to get in more fuel, and did anything happen?
No, there's no new fuel. We keep asking and we keep wanting for more fuel to get in, but no new mission is going on today. Gabriel, yep.
Thank you, Steph. Does the Secretary General support Francesca Albanese on a personal level?
Look, I think the Secretary General respects the work of all UN human rights rapporteurs. Their work is extremely important. It's an extremely important part of the human rights architecture. This is his point: is that targeted unilateral sanctions against UN officials, against UN experts, which Ms. Albanese is, are just unacceptable.
And has the Secretary General sent any communique or anything
I
to
don't know.
anyone
I
at the
don't.
U.S.?
We're in the process of answering a letter from Ambassador Shea. Javier.
On the same issue, Steph, did she plan to come to New York, Ms. Albanese, in the coming
I don't
weeks?
know. You'd have to ask our human rights colleagues.
If she comes, will she be able to enter the country and to access the United Nations to brief the Security Council?
I mean, the access to the building is not an issue. Access to where the UN office is, in this particular case in New York, has to do with the United States. They grant the visas. The U.S. There is a host country agreement in which they are bound to facilitate the travel of UN officials, experts, and diplomats, just like headquarters agreements that we have in other places where we have headquarters. Benny, then Ibtisam.
So a couple of questions. First of all, Albanese. There have been some condemnations by other countries other than the U.S. of her work as anti-Semitic, including France, which you mentioned in the context of July 14. Does that enter into the calculation of the unacceptable line?
Look, the Secretary General is not in the business of commenting on the work of the special rapporteurs. They're independent. Those mandates are given to them by member states. Special rapporteurs, as I told Gabriel, have an important role to play in the human rights architecture. If member states are unhappy with the work of special rapporteurs, and frankly, if you look at the series of special rapporteurs who have country-based or thematic-based mandates, there are a lot of member states who are not happy with one or different special rapporteurs at different times. That's their right. But our message is engage diplomatically with the UN human rights architecture and don't issue targeted sanctions.
On another topic, in your chronicling of West Bank issues,
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I missed that because I was looking at something else, but did you mention today's murder of an Israeli in Gush Etzion?
It's not in my reporting, but I can tell you that we condemn the killings of all civilians, whether they be Israelis or Palestinians.
You did talk about violence by settlers, but this was violence by anti-settlers.
And
So is that
if I can refer you back to the various regular reports by senior officials to the Security Council, violence against civilians is routinely condemned, whether it's conducted by Israelis or Palestinians.
Oh, yeah, but you talked today, not in various reports. You talked today about
I'm just telling you,
violence, and you do as you do every day.
Right,
But
and-
you
and-
failed to mention this one.
Well, you know, I think that's the one thing you and Abdelhamid will agree on, is I failed to mention everything that can please either one of you. Ibtisam.
Thank you. A follow-up on Albanese. The Human Rights Watch issued a statement on this issue, and I'm going to read one line in which they say UN and ICC member countries should strongly resist the U.S. government's shameless efforts to block justice for the world's worst crimes.
Sorry, this is Human
Human
Rights
Rights
Watch or
Watch.
UN Watch?
Human
Oh,
rights.
Human Rights. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I've,
No,
I've switched
not UN.
gears then. Okay, thank you.
No, Human Rights Watch. So in their statement, they also say that that government should strongly resist the war and condemn the outrageous sanction on Albanese. So I guess my question here, the following. These attacks on Albanese they are not isolated. There were attacks against UNRWA, attacks against Navy Pillay and her committee, any human rights, even UN human rights, are not able to get visas to Israel international staff, etc. So what is and if you remember also, Israel actually declared a few years ago 6 Palestinian human rights organizations and human rights and humanitarian organizations as terrorist organizations. And yet we have constantly the reaction from your office, yes, you don't agree with these steps that taken by US or Israel, but there is no clear public condemnations. And what are you doing? What is the Secretary General going to do to protect Albanese and Navi Pillay and all these human rights workers for the UN?
With due respect, I think what I read out today was pretty clear. I'm not going to disagree with the points, the examples that you've raised, but let's take a step back and